Bloody hell! What a rubbish dating sim game. I've spent so much money, and I haven't even experienced the royal treatment, yet I'm already imprisoned. Is this how you treat your sugar mummy? Thumbs down. Sis, please don't be angry, alright? Albert Cargill knelt down, his thick lashes lowered obediently. A sight that would melt anyone's heart and make them reluctant to scold him. Of course. If he wasn't planning to do anything to me, he'd be even more adorable. I was truly furious. You bloody MMPH. I had spent about 70 or 80,000 pounds raising Albert in the game, spanning about 10 years of in-game time, from when he was tiny until he turned 20. So, he knew me far too well. He effortlessly caught my slender wrists and kissed me until I was dizzy. Baby, remember to breathe. My mind exploded with fireworks. At that moment, I forgot all about giving a bad review. I only remembered one thing. Why the bloody hell did I enroll him in mixed martial arts classes back then? Now I couldn't escape at all. It's not a long story. The 23rd century is the era of holographic gaming. Players can project their brainwaves into games through gaming pods, thus gaining the most realistic experience. In this 18-plus holographic game called Dream Dating Plan, players can choose their own partners from an orphanage and develop romantic or familial relationships. Albert Cargill was my first target. To be honest, I didn't plan to conquer him at first. I had my eye on a boy who was quite skilled at making tea. However, young Albert gently hooked his finger around mine, with such a light touch that I could easily break free if I wanted. He looked up at me, his pupils hiding a glimmer of hope, like a delicate porcelain doll. I'm a good boy. Will you adopt me, miss? Please, he added. Oh my goodness, of course, little one. No problem at all, darling. You're so adorable, everything you say is right, oh my heart. Raise him. I'll sell my kidney if I have to, just to keep him in the game. With a grand gesture, I brought him back to my virtual cottage in Dream Dating Plan, introducing him to my NPC parents, making it all official. Then, from the orphanage, he was fostered into my family, becoming my little brother. Dream Dating Plan is really expensive. To raise Albert, I don't even dare to put 2 sausages in my instant noodles in real life, just to pay for his various interest classes and experience a bit of shining Albert. I truly want to give him the stars and the moon. Even if there are many men outside waiting for me, this little brother of mine is always my top priority. He says, sis, can you come to watch my performance tomorrow? So I cancel the date with that tea-loving boy who's been making me itch with anticipation. He says, sis, I really want us to wear matching outfits. So I spend a fortune to custom-order 2 sets of clothes, with our names embroidered on them. Until one day, I discovered he was a nutter. It was a dark, sticky evening. I had arranged to meet the now grown-up tea boy, or perhaps I should call him the tea lad, for dinner at a private kitchen. After the meal, I bid him farewell. But the Dream Dating Plan gave me a task to take the tea lad shopping. So I turned back to find him, only to see him cornered in a shadowy spot, looking up in terror at the looming shadow above. It was Albert Cargill. He was tall and straight, wearing a spotless white shirt, standing like a pine tree. Years of elite education had maintained his gentle and refined demeanor. Albert smiled, but his words were chilling. She hasn't even eaten at this place with me. It seems she really likes you. The cold gun barrel pressed against the lad's forehead. The black gun seemed capable of snatching one's soul. The tea lad stammered nervously, his body expressing rejection. She doesn't like me, no, she doesn't. Suddenly, a ringtone broke the silence, particularly jarring in the quiet. Albert glanced at his phone, smiling in a way that made one's scalp tingle. Shoo, don't make a sound, understood? The tea lad nodded tremblingly, not daring to look up. Satisfied, Albert turned his attention back to the phone, answering with a voice so pleasant it made one's legs weak. What is it, sis? Are you missing me? He always smiled, but only at times like this was there warmth in his smile. It melted his sharp, cold features. Where are you? I asked. You left me to go out, so I'm just waiting at home for you to return. I said in a deep voice, really? Of course, he replied playfully, like the boy next door full of sunshine. I sighed. Then, turn around and look. Albert, holding his phone, his spine suddenly stiffened as if struck by lightning. He turned mechanically. I stood before him, backlit, my expression unclear, standing in the broken light of the street lamp. I said, "Didn't you say you were at home?" His hand gripping the phone, knuckles white. The lad scurried away, leaving Albert standing alone. His solitary figure, stark and desolate, was cast in shadows by the dim street lamps. He stood there, head bowed, his pupils quivering imperceptibly. Glistening teardrops clung to his lashes. "Sis," he whispered. He offered no explanation, no rebuttal. He thought it would be like when he was little. That if he just stood there looking pitiful, I'd give him whatever he wanted without hesitation. I was absolutely livid. I turned on my heel and marched off to file a complaint. I've been bloody scrimping and saving. My bank account's drier than a bone. And this is what I've blown my cash on? Where's my big, sweet, obedient puppy gone? What happened to my clever, well-behaved little brother? Oi, customer service. Bollocks to this, I want my money back. Of course, after spending my money, how could those unscrupulous capitalists possibly allow me to get a refund? Customer service, darling, we don't think Albert becoming obsessive is his problem. Perhaps you're not very good at raising children? Customer service, sweetie, we recommend you purchase 108 Ways to Raise a Child. How to Raise a Healthy Child, and the Correct Guidance of Parents. Me? Hello? Are you there? Does anyone remember this is supposed to be an otome game? In the end, I bought the e-book version of The Correct Guidance of Parents. And read it with an effort comparable to studying for A-levels, burning the midnight oil. The moment I finished the book and closed the app, I felt that there were no insurmountable obstacles in this world. And no brother who couldn't be taught well, only sisters who didn't know how to teach. Look, the sky is clear, the clouds are drifting gently. How beautiful. Look, the house is dimly lit, with a subtle fragrance in the air. How lovely. Look at the young man's graceful fingers, unbuttoning his white shirt one by one. His collarbone, impossible to look away from, is like white jade, partially visible. A small mole on the collarbone adds a touch of allure. How beauty, wait a minute. What the bloody hell are you doing? I glared at him fiercely. But my gaze couldn't help but wander down from his exquisite collarbone. Damn, I'm sinful. I'm so despicable, I'm so no. I can't. He's the brother who's staying with us, meant to take care of me in my old age. But my tears, I can't help but let them fall from the corners of my mouth. As I woke up in the morning, I found Albert leaning over my bed. His index finger gently hooked around my delicate knuckle, his thumb caressing and playing with it. My hand seemed like some novel toy to him as he kept squeezing it, utterly fascinated. Seeing me awake, he slowly released my hand and lowered his gaze with a feigned look of dejection. Sis, he murmured. He was always good at playing the victim, yet there was no trace of remorse or unease in his expression. It was a glaring testament to how miserably I had failed in raising him properly. What on earth did he have to be upset about? I sat up, trying my best to muster a scornful laugh with some semblance of authority. Huh. Whether Albert had anticipated my cold response or not, he maintained a calm smile and said, "You must be famished." He picked up the bowl of warm porridge from the bedside table, scooped up a spoonful, blew on it to cool it down, and then brought it to my lips. His gaze was intense, eagerly awaiting my response. However, even though Albert's attitude was as good as it could be, when I was in a bad mood, I would still find fault with him. I turned my head away, refusing to eat. Who's to blame for me being bloody starving? He paused, then smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners like a child who had successfully sneaked some sweets. It's my fault. You're right to criticize me. I shouldn't have kept us up so late, it's all on me. Since it's all my fault, you shouldn't deprive yourself, he said, scooping up another spoonful of porridge and blowing on it to cool it down for me. Instead, you should feel free to boss me around and give me a hard time. He tilted his head and smiled. Don't you think? I I was convinced by this logic. You have a point. In that case, I want to add jelly, sago, and treacle toffee to my porridge. Albert took a deep breath. All right. A bowl of porridge ultimately turned into a chaotic concoction of jelly, sago, treacle toffee, and various other additions one might find in a stew. I nodded with satisfaction before finally putting the spoon in my mouth. As was my habit, I glanced up to steal a look at Albert. Sunlight cascaded down, dancing on his thick, dense eyelashes, casting dappled shadows on his eyelids. He looked impossibly handsome. He watched me as I held the spoon in my mouth for what seemed like ages. Still smiling gently and warmly, maintaining his posture of holding up his own spoon. There was a hint of resignation in his expression, but no impatience. Just like when we were children, knowing I loved sweets. He would secretly hoard the candies given by the NPC parents and slip them into my school bag. With me, he was always incredibly gentle. "Good girl, don't bite the spoon," he said. His voice was low and restrained, yet it tickled my eardrums, making my ears burn as if on fire. I released the spoon and averted my gaze. "Oh, all right," I replied. To be honest, I've always been quite fond of Albert. Or, to be more precise, I adored the image of him as a devoted puppy who always put me first. Even when occasionally neglected, he would only blame himself or feel dejected. For this sweet and sensible puppy in my eyes, I've spent an enormous amount of money and effort, far surpassing even that charming tea lad who made my heart flutter. So, when I discovered that Albert wasn't the Albert I had imagined, that he wasn't content with just being my brother, I found it hard to accept. As I savored the sweet treacle toffee, I pondered to myself, but do I truly only like the Albert I see through my rose-tinted glasses? I swallowed the toffee, some sliding down my throat while others got stuck as I gulped too hastily. Cough, cough, cough. Albert set down the pot of stew-like porridge, wrapped his arms around me, and gently patted my back, sighing almost imperceptibly. "Sis, feeling better?" "Silly sis, how can you daydream while eating?" I coughed until my eyes watered, glaring at him with moist eyes that begged for sympathy. "Cough, you're the silly one, cough, cough." Albert wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes, chuckling softly, his chest rumbling. He said, "Yes, I'm the silliest." I coughed until I was exhausted, naturally leaning on his shoulder. Oh well, whether he's a devoted puppy or a possessive lover, a boyfriend or a brother, what does it matter? After all, it's just a game setting. I've spent the money, might as well get my money's worth, right? We're all adults, let's be more carefree. I cupped his face with both hands. His pupils quivered subtly, his words almost disappearing into the air. "Sis?" In response, I placed a kiss on his brow. "That's right. It's just a game after all. Having an obsessively possessive yet ever-obliging lover as a partner isn't such a big deal, is it? If in the future I really can't stand his personality, I can always just delete the account and be done with it. But this is the worst-case scenario. As a responsible citizen of our great nation, I can't be so pessimistic. I must take the initiative and try to save this troubled young man. "Albert, do you want to be with me?" Albert, usually so flirtatious, was silent at this crucial moment. He simply stroked my hair gently, letting me listen to his heart beating like a drum. The answer was evident, simple, and singular. So, he let his heartbeat speak for him. "Yes. Very much." I buried my face in the crook of his neck and mumbled. "Then, would you see a therapist?" His fingers froze. The dark, malevolent words that had been bubbling up like boiling water, rushing to his throat, were almost impossible to suppress. "Can you do that, Albert?" I looked up, meeting his gaze. I could see the waves of malice swirling in his eyes, gradually building into a tempestuous storm. Just one glance into those eyes made me feel cold all over, as if I was falling into an abyss. I guessed that at this moment, the thoughts rolling around in his head must be no different from any other obsessive person. For instance, killing me first, so I could never say anything to annoy him again. Then preserving my body, so we could be together forever. But in the end, his fist clenched, then relaxed. He leaned close to my ear and said resignedly, "If that's what you wish. All right." Just like before, unconditionally indulging my every request. I walked with Albert to the door of the counseling room, intending to accompany him inside, but he tugged at my sleeve. Suddenly, I was enveloped in the crisp scent of pine. As he nuzzled his nose against my cheek and asked in a low voice, "No matter what happens, you won't leave me, will you?" Regardless of whether Albert was a dangerous wolf or not. He always retracted his sharp claws and fangs when he was with me. He would obediently put on his leash, personally handing over the shackles to me, becoming the submissive puppy at my feet. How could I not soften at this? "Of course I won't leave you. Even if you were on your deathbed, I would willingly lay you to rest." "Really? Really? Forever?" "Forever." He inhaled deeply at the crook of my neck. Hearing my resolute tone, he chuckled with satisfaction. I didn't know what he found so amusing. After all, a normal person couldn't understand someone with such an obsessive love. When he finally pulled away from my neck, he had regained his composure. But his eyes still held a hint of vulnerability, a fragile beauty like that of a battered rose. He gazed at me intently, his eyes as deep and dark as ink, seeming to want to draw me in and drown me in their viscous darkness. "Don't lie to me. I believe you, but this is the last time. The last time." I smiled and said, "Of course I won't lie to you." Later, I would regret countless times how carelessly I had made that promise. But that's all for later. The current issue is that Albert said he wanted to see the therapist alone, leaving me outside. His reason was that he didn't want me to see him in a vulnerable state. As a result, I'm now sitting alone on a bench in the corridor, feeling rather isolated as I watch groups of people coming and going. It's a bit lonely. Just then, I spot a familiar face approaching. The tea lad was walking towards the waiting room, head hanging low and face pale, when he spotted me. It was as if a switch had been flipped. He suddenly sprang to life, sprinting away as if he'd seen a ghost. This recovery ability could be considered a medical miracle. Then, with a loud thud, he fell flat on his face. The dull thump as his forehead hit the ground sounded painfully loud. I grabbed his elbow, trying to help him up. "What the hell are you running from? I may like Albert best, but I've spent quite a bit on you too, you know? Is this how you treat your sugar mommy?" The tea lad flailed about, avoiding my helping hand. Under my confused gaze, he said, "Stay away from me. I don't want to die. Leave me alone." He had completely abandoned his previous clingy, flirtatious demeanor. Now he was the very picture of rejection. He was even rattling off words like a machine gun, non-stop. He pouted, rubbing his forehead, and gave me a few more glances before saying in surprise, "Wait, how are you able to go out?" "Huh? I finally understand why you're here." Clearly, there were some mental issues at play. The tea lad wasn't stupid, of course. He understood the implication of my words. "No, I mean, under normal circumstances, shouldn't you have been locked up by now?" "What?" The tea lad pondered for a moment, then had a sudden realization. "Oh, I get it. Albert Cargill is nearby, right? Friends, I have no idea what he thinks he's figured out." He slapped his thigh, wincing at the unexpected pain on his delicate face before continuing. "Ouch, I knew it. He's fishing, isn't he? Impressive. Very high level. Deliberately letting you out to catch all your old lovers in one go, so you'll belong only to him. Brilliant. He can't come up with a plan like that without being a Yandere for at least a decade. Without being brain dead for at least a decade, you couldn't come up with this kind of logic either. To say it's not even close would be an understatement. It's completely unrelated." The tea lad, thinking he'd reached a conclusion, looked at me with wide, sincere eyes and said, "Sis, considering I've never tried to con you out of money or seduce you before, can we just part ways amicably? Tell Albert not to come after me. Tell him to go find Coach Humphrey at York Sports Center, Professor Crispin at Chelsea College of Arts, Mr. Aubrey at SPA, and CEO Barnaby at Sheffield Group. He clasped his hands together, his voice choking up. Please. Albert Cargill is just too terrifying. Can you help me out? Good deeds will be rewarded. As he spoke, a tall, straight figure descended from above him, blocking out most of the light. The T-lad looked up in confusion. Albert stood beside the T-lad, backlit. His fingertips were pinching a medical record, partially obscuring the dark, unclear look in his eyes. But he gave the T-lad a sidelong glance. This similar expression made the T-lad shudder, recalling that night when he was on the brink of death. His scalp tingled as he stammered, Albert, excuse me, I'm not here to break you up, I'm here to join you. No, that's not it. I'm here to wish you a long and happy marriage, may you have children soon. The register office is just down the road on the right, feel free to go anytime. Don't mind me, I'm not worthy of standing in the way of your sweet love. I belong under a car. The T-lad rattled off his lines without pausing for breath, then stiffly shuffled away. He rolled away just in time, leaving me alone to face Albert. I coughed tactically twice and reached for his medical chart. Ahem, finished? Albert was at least a head taller than me. He lifted the chart slightly out of my reach, making it impossible for me to grab it even if I stood on tiptoes and jumped. As he held the chart, his deepening eyes were filled with an impending sense of crisis. Like the cracks in shattered glass, densely enveloping my bouncing form. In the next instant, the fleeting light buried in the abyss was swirled into the depths of his eyes, completely concealed. He handed me the chart, asking with concern. Did I finish too quickly? Didn't give you enough time to catch up with your old friend? I blushed sheepishly, touching my nose tip, and said, not at all. We didn't have much catching up to do anyway. That's good. I had a bit of a misunderstanding with that chap earlier and wanted to apologize. But he seemed nervous and left as soon as he saw me. I was worried I might have upset you by disturbing your conversation. He smiled shyly, his eyes bright and clear, exuding the carefree charm of youth. It was as if the look that seemed ready to devour me alive moments ago had been just an illusion. Ahem, no, not at all. Really? You're not upset? No, I'm not. Then prove it to me. His long, slender hand appeared before me, fingers spread, waving slightly, dazzlingly white. I gently placed my hand on his, caressing his skin, and interlocked our fingers as we walked through the corridor. A rosy blush slowly crept up my fair neck. Finally, we left that troublesome place behind. Phew. He's so easy to placate. Surely he didn't hear anything about Humphrey, Crispin, Aubrey, or Barnaby, right? As it turns out, my dear friends, I was far too young and naive. My understanding of these obsessive types was woefully inadequate. In short, I deeply regret my actions now. Why on earth did I have to be so meddlesome and call out to the T-lad in the counseling room? I slapped my right hand with my left in frustration. Then, I snuck a glance at Albert lying beside me. His profile was smooth and natural, strikingly beautiful. Yet in his slumber, his raven-like lashes quivered slightly, his brow furrowed, appearing docile and vulnerable. It's hard to imagine that the same young man had earlier brandished a gun, nearly killing the T-lad, and now had somehow managed to blow up my entire social circle. The mobile phone screen flickered on and off. Several chat messages were displayed. Humphrey, Crispin, Aubrey, and Barnaby had all sent messages ending their relationships, saying, Albert is a kind-hearted good man. He loves you very much. You should cherish him. Why do these people have a stronger survival instinct than I do? Confused, I sent a question mark. Instantly, a red exclamation mark appeared in front of the message. Message sent, but rejected by the recipient. Blimey, can the dating target even block me? Customer service, are you asleep? I'm having trouble sleeping. But before I could complain to customer service, the system found me first. System, darling, your smart device has received a text message. Would you like to exit the game or go idle? I glanced at Albert. He was sleeping soundly, likely not to wake up anytime soon. Me, idle. I had no idea that the moment I went idle and offline. Albert's eyelashes fluttered precisely, and he opened his eyes. He remained silent for a moment, then turned and pulled me into his arms. The gentle warmth beneath my clothes, the flowing blood, and the steady breathing all turned into icy blades, cutting to the bone. Yet he still tightened his arms, his shoulder blades tensing to the point of spasm, and whispered, "You lied to me again. You promised you wouldn't leave. Liar."